The HOA president stood on my porch, watched clear video footage of her son stealing my packages, and calmly told me my mail was an attractive nuisance. I didn't scream, and I certainly didn't pay the $300 in fake retaliation fines she taped to my front door the next morning. Instead, I rigged a decoy cardboard box with a heavy-duty mousetrap, a motorized fan, and 4 ounces of weaponized neon magenta bank dye. For good measure, I added a glass vial of fermented fish sauce that had been baking in my sweltering garage. I'm Mark, a 38-year-old audio technician who just wanted a quiet suburban life. But when Brenda gave her kid a free pass to rob me, I realized karma needed some structural engineering. Before I show you exactly what explosive hot pink dye does to a pristine white tennis outfit, let me take you back to the beginning. I bought my house exactly 3 years ago. It is a modest place. 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, and a little porch out front where a guy can drink his coffee in peace. That was the dream anyway. Just a quiet slice of the suburbs where I could fix up vintage audio equipment in my garage and mind my own business. I did not want trouble. I did not want drama. I just wanted to solder old amplifier tubes and occasionally wave to a neighbor. And for the first 2 months, it was perfect. The neighborhood smelled like fresh-cut pine and drying driveway sealant. The lawns were green, the streets were quiet. Then I met Brenda. Every neighborhood has a Brenda. She was the president of the Homeowners Association. She wore pastel velour tracksuits that looked like they belonged in 1998. And she marched around the block in aggressive white orthopedic walking shoes that squeaked with every step she took. Squeak, squeak, squeak. You could hear her coming from 3 houses down. She carried a thick wooden clipboard with a silver clip, and she always used a sparkly pink gel pen. She did not just walk the neighborhood, she patrolled it. I first officially met her on a Tuesday morning. I was on my porch enjoying a dark roast when the squeaking started. It stopped right at the edge of my driveway. I looked up. Brenda was staring at my grass. She was not just looking at it. She was judging it. I took a sip of my coffee. "Morning," I said. Brenda slowly raised her head. She had this tight, practiced smile that did not quite reach her eyes. It was the kind of smile you get from a bank teller right before they tell you your account is overdrawn. "Good morning," she said. Her voice was overly sweet, saccharine. "I am just doing my weekly rounds, checking on compliance." "Compliance," I repeated. "Yes," she said, clicking her sparkly pen. Click, click. "Your mailbox post. It is looking a little weathered." I looked at the post. It was painted white. It looked exactly like every other mailbox post on the street. "It looks fine to me," I said. "The bylaws," Brenda said, taking a deliberate step onto my driveway, "state that all mailbox posts must be painted in bright white gloss. Yours is starting to look a little eggshell. I'm going to have to issue a warning." She started scribbling on her clipboard. From the porch next door, I heard the sharp, metallic snap of a lighter. I glanced over. My neighbor Gary was sitting in his rusted folding chair. Gary is a retired diesel mechanic who communicates entirely through grunts and the occasional nod. He was lighting a cigar, watching Brenda with the kind of exhausted amusement you usually reserve for a toddler throwing a tantrum in a grocery store. Gary blew out a plume of smoke. He looked at me, then looked at Brenda, and gave a slow, barely visible shake of his head. "Eggshell," I said, turning back to Brenda. "You are writing me up for eggshell." "It is just a warning," she said brightly, tearing the yellow carbon copy off her clipboard and marching it up my walkway. She handed it to me like it was a gift. "Have it repainted by Friday. We have to keep our standards up." She spun around on her aggressive rubber soles and squeaked her way down the street. I looked at the yellow slip of paper. I looked at Gary. Gary took another drag of his cigar. "Wait until she measures your trash cans," he rumbled. His voice sounded like gravel in a blender. I thought that was a joke. 2 weeks later, I learned it was not. But the real problem did not start with the mailbox or the trash cans or the length of my grass. The real problem started with my packages. As I mentioned, I restore vintage audio gear. People send me broken receivers from the 1970s, and I track down the rare parts to fix them. These parts are not cheap, and they are almost impossible to replace. I get a lot of deliveries, small, heavy cardboard boxes dropped on my porch by hurried delivery drivers. For months, everything was fine. Then, on a Thursday, a package said delivered, but my porch was empty. I checked the bushes, I checked the side door. I even walked over to Gary's house to see if the driver left it there. "Nothing," Gary said, leaning over his porch railing. "Saw the truck pull up around 2 o'clock. Driver put a box right on your mat." "It is gone now," I said. "Porch pirates," Gary grunted, getting bold. I was annoyed, but I figured it was a random crime of opportunity. Some guy following the delivery truck. I filed a claim, refunded my furious client out of my own pocket, and moved on. But then it happened again. 4 days later. Another box, this one containing 2 rare glass vacuum tubes worth about $300, delivered at 11 in the morning. I stepped out onto the porch at 11:15. The box was gone. Now I was paying attention. Someone was not following the truck. Someone was watching my house. I did not call the police. The police do not care about stolen mail unless you hand them a signed confession and a high-definition video of the crime occurring. I knew I needed my own evidence, so I rummaged through my old stash and I found a tiny wireless camera. It was not much bigger than a quarter. I spent an entire Sunday afternoon hollowing out an old wooden birdhouse, mounting it on the pillar near my front door, and hiding the camera lens directly inside the entry hole. It had a perfect, unobstructed view of the welcome mat. I ordered a cheap set of generic speaker wires to act as bait. 2 days later, the delivery guy dropped the box on the mat. I was in my kitchen. My phone buzzed with a motion alert. I opened the app, my pulse ticking up just a little bit. I expected to see a stranger in a hoodie. I expected a masked guy running up from a rusted sedan. Instead, I saw an electric scooter. It was one of those absurdly expensive stand-up models with the thick tires and the neon underglow. The kid riding it rolled right up my driveway. He did not even bother to look around. He wore a pair of designer sneakers that probably cost more than my first car, a backwards flat-brim hat, and a smug, open-mouthed expression that made me instantly want to throw my phone against the wall. It was Tyler, Brenda's 19-year-old son. He lived 3 houses down. He did not work. He didn't study. His entire existence seemed to consist of riding that stupid electric scooter up and down the sidewalks, terrorizing the local stray cats, and apparently stealing my property. On the video, Tyler hopped off the scooter, walked up my steps, scooped up the box, and tucked it under his arm. He even paused to use his other hand to adjust his hat. Then, he got back on the scooter and glided away. The whole thing took 10 seconds. I just stood there in my kitchen, staring at the screen. I was not angry yet. I was actually relieved. This was a layup. I knew exactly who it was. I knew where he lived, and I had crystal clear, high-definition video proof. I put my shoes on. I walked out my front door, down the sidewalk, and straight up to Brenda's perfectly manicured lawn. I rang her doorbell. It chimed an overly complicated classical melody. Brenda opened the door. She was wearing a pink tracksuit today. She looked at me, her fake smile locking into place. "Mark, to what do we owe the pleasure? Did you finally buy that gloss white paint?" "Brenda," I said, keeping my voice entirely flat, "we have a problem." "Oh?" She blinked, adjusting the collar of her tracksuit. "If it is about the new community garden fees, you will have to bring that up at the board meeting." "It is not about the garden," I said. "It is about Tyler." Her smile vanished instantly. The temperature on the porch seemed to drop 10 degrees. "Excuse me?" "Your son," I said. "He has been stealing packages off my porch. I am missing over $500 worth of rare electronics." Brenda crossed her arms. Her fingers dug into her velour sleeves. "That is quite an accusation, Mark. My Tyler is a good boy. He is just taking a gap year to find himself. He does not steal." I did not say a word. I just pulled out my phone, opened the app, pulled up the video from 10 minutes ago and held the screen right in front of her face. I watched her eyes track the movement on the screen. I watched her see her son roll up on the scooter she bought him. I watched her see him take the box. I waited for the apology. I waited for her to look embarrassed. I waited for her to call him down and make him return my property. Instead, Brenda pushed my phone away with one stiff finger. She looked me dead in the eye. She did not blush. She did not stutter. She stood up taller. "Well," Brenda said, her voice dripping with absolute unshakable arrogance, "if you did not leave such interesting boxes sitting out in the open on your porch, he would not be curious. It is an attractive nuisance. Really, Mark, you are just tempting the youth in this neighborhood. You should be more responsible with your deliveries." If your eye just twitched hearing that, hit the like button. Because in that moment, I needed a stiff drink just to keep my hands from shaking. I stared at her. I literally could not comprehend the sequence of mental gymnastics she had just performed. "An attractive nuisance," I repeated, "my mail, on my private property." "Is an attractive nuisance." "It is an eyesore, frankly," Brenda said, stepping forward so she was practically in my personal space. "Having cardboard boxes cluttering up the neighborhood aesthetic, it lowers property values. If anything, Tyler was doing you a favor by cleaning up your mess." She was serious. She was absolutely 100% serious. "I want my property back," I said. "Or I am calling the police." Brenda laughed. It was a sharp, grating sound. "Call them. Do you think the police care about a cardboard box? And let me remind you, Mark, I am the HOA president. I have a lot of discretion over how strictly we enforce the neighborhood bylaws. It would be a shame if we had to start inspecting your property for violations." She stepped back inside and slammed the door in my face. I stood on her porch for a long time. The brass knocker on her door was shaped like a smiling sun. It felt like it was mocking me. I walked slowly back to my house. Gary was on his porch, trimming a cigar with a small pair of silver cutters. He looked at me as I walked up my driveway. "How did that go?" Gary asked. "She said my mail is an attractive nuisance," I said. Gary paused. He slowly lowered his cigar cutters. He looked at Brenda's house, then back at me. A slow, terrifying grin spread across his weathered face. "Oh," he said softly. "She poked the bear." "She threatened to fine me," I said. "She will," Gary said, striking a match. "Brenda does not lose gracefully. You better buckle up." Gary was right. The retaliation began the very next morning. I woke up, made my coffee, and walked outside to get the paper. There was a yellow slip taped to my front door. It was a citation from the HOA, $50. The violation? Trash receptacles left in public view past the designated retrieval time. The garbage truck had come at 8 in the morning. I had pulled the bins back to my garage at 8:15. She must have been hiding behind her curtains, stopwatch in hand, waiting for the truck to pull away. 2 days later, another yellow slip, $75. Grass exceeding the maximum allowable height of 2.5 inches. I measured my grass. It was exactly 2 3/4 inches long. A week later, a third slip, $100. Unapproved modifications to the exterior facade. She was citing the tiny wooden birdhouse I had hung to hide the camera. She was trying to bleed me out. She wanted me to apologize. She wanted me to learn my place. And the worst part was, Tyler knew it. The kid started riding his scooter past my house on purpose. He would glide by at 3 in the afternoon, slow down right in front of my driveway, and look directly at my porch. One time, he actually stopped, locked eyes with me through the living room window, and gave me a lazy, sarcastic salute before zooming off. He felt invincible. His mother had basically given him a license to steal, and she was punishing the victim to protect him. I sat at my kitchen table that night, looking at the stack of yellow fines. $300 in fake violations, over $500 in stolen parts. My business was taking a hit because I had to halt all deliveries to my home address, and rent a post office box 2 towns over just to ensure my clients' parts arrived safely. I rubbed my eyes. I am not a vindictive guy by nature. I prefer to let karma do its job. But looking at those yellow slips, I realized something important. Karma is slow. Sometimes, karma needs a little structural engineering. I opened my laptop. I did not search for legal advice. I did not search for HOA dispute resolution. I searched for industrial security die. I was going to build a trap. Now, I know what you're thinking. A glitter bomb. People do that on the internet all the time. But glitter is too polite. You can vacuum glitter. You can wash glitter off your face with a good exfoliating scrub. I did not want Tyler to be mildly inconvenienced. I wanted him branded. I found a specialized supply website that sold tamper evidence security dye. This is the stuff banks use in those exploding money packs. The description on the website was beautiful. It read, "Highly concentrated marking powder, reacts immediately with the natural oils in human skin, extremely difficult to remove, may take several weeks to fully fade." They had several color options: red, blue, orange. I selected neon magenta, the brightest, most obnoxious shade of hot pink legally available. But I did not stop there. If I was going to ruin Tyler's week, I wanted to attack all the senses. I drove down to the local Asian supermarket and bought a large bottle of concentrated fish sauce. Then, I left that bottle sitting in my hot garage for 4 days. The smell became something unholy. It smelled like a dumpster behind a seafood restaurant in the middle of July. My plan was simple, but building the device required some finesse. I am good with electronics, but I am not a special effects master. I took a medium-sized cardboard box with an authentic shipping label. Inside, I rigged a heavy-duty mousetrap to a battery-powered motorized fan. The trigger for the mousetrap was connected to a simple tension wire attached to the bottom flap of the box. When the box is lifted, the tension wire pulls. The mousetrap snaps. The fan turns on. Above the fan, I mounted a fragile plastic pouch filled with 4 ounces of the hot pink marking powder. Next to it, a small glass vial containing my fermented fish sauce nightmare. The snapping arm of the mousetrap would smash the glass and rupture the pouch. The fan would instantly blow the mixture straight up, outward, and through the purposefully weakened seams of the cardboard box. It was a beautiful machine. But this is real life. And in real life, things do not go perfectly. I was arming the trap on my workbench in the garage. I had the safety pin in the mousetrap. I was carefully pouring the magenta dye powder into the pouch. My hands were a little sweaty. The powder was incredibly fine, almost like powdered sugar. Just as I sealed the pouch, my elbow bumped the edge of the workbench. A tiny, microscopic puff of the pink powder drifted up into the air and settled right onto my left index finger. I did not think much of it. I wiped it on my jeans. 5 minutes later, I noticed my finger was glowing. The moisture from my skin had activated the dye. My entire index finger was a vibrant, radioactive shade of pink. I went to the sink and scrubbed it with dish soap. Nothing. I tried rubbing alcohol. Nothing. I tried industrial pumice soap used for grease. The skin got red and raw, but the pink dye did not budge. I stood there in my garage, staring at my finger. The warning on the website had not been exaggerating. This stuff was permanent. Gary wandered over to my driveway, holding a cold glass of iced tea. He leaned against the open garage door frame and looked at me. Then he looked at my glowing pink finger. "You look like you fingered a flamingo," Gary observed dryly. "It is permanent," I said, holding my hand up. "This stuff does not wash off." Gary took a sip of his tea. "Good." It took me another 2 days to perfect the trigger mechanism. I tested it 5 times using flour instead of dye. Every single time the tension wire popped, the trap snapped, and a cloud of white dust exploded in a 3-foot radius. It was ready. Thursday morning, the day of the drop. I woke up early. The neighborhood was quiet. The sun was just starting to burn the dew off the grass. I carried the bait box out to my front porch. I placed it perfectly on the welcome mat, making sure the logo was facing outward. I carefully slid the tension wire under the lip of the mat, securing it with a heavy piece of duct tape so it would hold firm when the box was lifted. I pulled the safety pin. The trap was live. If you are waiting for this little punk to get painted like a modern art masterpiece, leave a comment right now and tell me what color you would have chosen. Because I still think neon magenta was the only correct answer. I went back inside. I made a fresh cup of coffee. I pulled a stool up to the kitchen counter, opened my laptop, and brought up the live feed from the hidden camera. And then I waited. 10 o'clock came and went. 11 o'clock, 12:30. I started to sweat. What if he did not come today? What if the tape holding the tension wire lost its stickiness in the afternoon heat? What if a stray cat knocked the box over and got blasted with pink fish dye? At 1:15 in the afternoon, Gary walked out onto his porch. He had a folding aluminum lawn chair in one hand and a cooler in the other. He set the chair down facing my house. He opened the cooler, pulled out a soda, popped the tab, and sat down. He was settling in for the show. At 1:45, my phone buzzed, motion detected. My heart hammered against my ribs. I stared at the laptop screen. There he was. Tyler. He was wearing a pristine white hoodie today. Expensive, baggy, bright white. He had a pair of brand new light gray sweatpants on. He rolled up my driveway on the electric scooter, stopping right at the edge of the steps. I held my breath. I literally stopped breathing. Tyler kicked the kickstand down. He casually sauntered up my front steps. He looked bored. He looked like taking my property was just another tedious chore he had to complete between playing video games. He stood over the box. He reached down with both hands. He did not lift it gently. He yanked it up, turning away as he did, already moving back toward his scooter. Through the video feed, I saw the tension wire pull taut. In my kitchen, through the closed window, I heard the trap. It was not a small click. It was a loud, violent thwack, followed instantly by the high-pitched whine of the motorized fan. On the screen, the seams of the cardboard box blew outward. A massive, dense cloud of neon magenta dust erupted from the center of the box. It hit Tyler right in the chest, completely engulfing his torso. The force of the fan blew the powder straight up into his face. For a second, the camera view was just a wall of hot pink smoke. Then, the scream. It was a high, piercing wail. It sounded like a smoke detector that had learned how to feel pain. I dropped my coffee mug in the sink and ran to my front door. I threw it open. The smell hit me first. It was a physical wall of stench, fermented fish, rotting garbage, and sour sweat. It punched me in the back of the throat. I actually had to gag and cover my nose with my shirt. Tyler had dropped the box. He was stumbling backward down my driveway. He was completely, profoundly pink. The dye had coated his face, his hair, his pristine white hoodie. Because he was sweating in the afternoon sun, the powder had immediately activated. It looked like someone had spray painted his head. "My eyes!" Tyler shrieked, swatting blindly at the air. His hands, now also stained vibrant magenta, were just smearing the dye deeper into his skin. He tripped over the curb, flailing his arms, and crashed straight into his own electric scooter, knocking it over into the grass. From the porch next door, Gary took a slow sip of his soda. He did not say a word. He just smiled. The commotion was loud enough to wake the dead. And it certainly woke Brenda. 2 houses down, Brenda's front door flew open. She came sprinting out, wearing her white orthopedic shoes and a matching white tennis skirt. She had her clipboard in one hand. "Tyler!" she screamed. "Tyler, what happened? Who did this to you?" She ran down the sidewalk, her shoes squeaking frantically. She saw her son writhing on my driveway covered in pink powder. She did not look at me standing on the porch. She sprinted straight onto my driveway to help him. But remember what I said about the dye? It was a fine powder, and a lot of it had settled on the smooth concrete of my driveway. Brenda, running at full speed in her aggressive rubber-soled shoes, hit the patch of magenta dust. It acted exactly like a sheet of black ice. Her feet went entirely out from under her. Both of her shoes flew up into the air. The clipboard went flying, the sparkly pink pen launching into my bushes. Brenda hung, suspended in midair for a fraction of a second before gravity remembered how to work. She landed flat on her back, directly in the center of the dye puddle. The impact knocked the wind out of her with a loud, hollow oof. And then the sprinkler system kicked on. I had set my automatic sprinklers to run at 2 o'clock every day. It was exactly 2 o'clock. The sprinkler head right next to the driveway popped up and began spraying a wide, rhythmic arc of water. The water hit Brenda. The water hit Tyler. The water hit the driveway. And the water activated every single ounce of dormant powder left in the area. Within seconds, the driveway turned into a river of neon pink sludge. Brenda's pristine white tennis outfit absorbed the dye like a sponge. She tried to sit up, gasping for air, her hands slipping in the pink mud. Tyler was coughing. "Mom, it smells like death! I'm gonna throw up!" "Help me up!" Brenda screeched, grabbing her son's arm, but her hands were slick, and she pulled him down with her. They were a thrashing, groaning pile of pink velour and fish sauce. I walked slowly down my front steps. I stopped exactly at the edge of the driveway, keeping my shoes safely on the clean grass. I looked down at them. Brenda finally managed to get to her knees. Her face was smeared with bright pink streaks. Her hair was matted to her forehead. She looked up at me, her eyes burning with pure, unadulterated fury. "You!" she gasped, pointing a shaking neon pink finger at me. "You assaulted my son. You booby-trapped your property. I am calling the police. I am calling the HOA board. I am going to have your house repossessed." I did not raise my voice. I kept my tone perfectly level. "Assaulted?" I asked. "Brenda, I simply had a package delivered. What my private property decides to do while sitting on my private welcome mat is my business. If your son had not trespassed onto my property and stolen my mail, he would not currently look like a piece of chewed bubble gum." Brenda tried to stand up, but her shoe slipped again, and she fell hard onto her hands. She inhaled deeply to yell, and the smell of the fermented fish sauce finally registered in her brain. She turned pale beneath the pink dye. She dry heaved, covering her mouth. Just then, the worst possible thing happened for Brenda. Susan walked by. Susan was the vice president of the HOA. She was Brenda's right-hand woman, her enforcer, her best friend. Susan was walking her golden retriever. Susan stopped on the sidewalk. She stared at the driveway. She stared at the broken cardboard box, the pink sludge, the writhing teenager, and the HOA president on her hands and knees, looking like she had just wrestled a cartoon character and lost. "Susan," Brenda croaked. "Susan, call the police. He attacked us." Susan looked at the bait box on my porch. She looked at Tyler holding the torn cardboard flaps. She looked at me. I gave Susan a polite nod. Susan looked back at Brenda. She saw the fish sauce dripping from Brenda's sleeve. She saw the absolute, undeniable guilt written all over the scene. Susan slowly tightened her grip on her dog's leash. She did not pull out her phone. She did not offer a hand. "I think," Susan said, her voice tight and clipped, "I'm going to finish my walk now, Brenda. We have a board meeting on Tuesday. We have a lot to discuss." Susan turned around and walked away quickly. Her dog did not even sniff the yard. Brenda watched her only ally abandon her. You could literally see the fight drain out of her body. The superiority, the arrogance, the absolute certainty that she owned the neighborhood. It all washed away in a puddle of pink water. She did not say another word to me. She slowly got to her feet, her squeaky shoes now making a wet, squelching sound. She grabbed Tyler by his ruined pink hoodie. They limped back down the sidewalk toward their house. Two silent, glowing, terrible-smelling losers. Gary clapped slowly from his porch. 3 deliberate claps. The sound echoed down the quiet street. I almost felt bad for her. Almost. I spent the next hour hosing down my driveway. The pink dye washed away from the concrete eventually, though it left a faint rosy tint for a few weeks. The smell took longer to fade, but it was worth it. The police never came. Brenda knew she could not explain why her son was holding my torn package on my driveway without admitting he was a thief. The HOA board meeting on Tuesday was apparently legendary. I did not go, but Gary gave me the summary. Susan motioned for a vote of no confidence. Brenda was removed from her position as president. They cited her inability to represent the aesthetic values of the community. A very polite way of saying she looked unhinged. All 3 of the fake fines she had issued me were quietly dismissed from the system by Wednesday afternoon. As for Tyler, the warning on the website was entirely accurate. The dye did not wash off, not in a day, not in a week. He walked around the neighborhood for an entire month, looking like he had a severe, localized sunburn that only affected his face and hands. He stopped riding his scooter. He stopped wearing flat-brim hats. In fact, he mostly just stayed inside. My package deliveries resumed immediately. The regular delivery driver actually left a small smiley face on my next box, drawn in Sharpie. Word travels fast. The neighborhood went back to being quiet. The smell of fresh-cut pine returned. The squeaking shoes were gone forever. It was a Tuesday morning, about 2 months later. I was sitting on my porch drinking a dark roast coffee. My repaired vintage amplifier was humming smoothly in the garage. The mailbox post was still a defiant shade of weathered eggshell. Gary walked out onto his porch. He struck a match, lit a cigar, and blew out a puff of smoke. He looked at me. He looked down the street toward Brenda's house, then back to me. He raised his cigar in a silent toast. I raised my coffee mug back. Sometimes, a quiet slice of the suburbs really is a beautiful thing. You just have to be willing to defend it.